Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and a look at my favourite albums of 2022. I've prepared a top 10 list. I haven't ranked these. I will be listing them in chronological order, but when we get to the end of the list, I will reveal which album is my favourite album of 2022. Special shout out and thanks goes to my son who crocheted me this wonderful hat for Christmas. I hope everybody watching Bicycle Legs has had a wonderful holiday season, whichever holiday you happen to celebrate. We celebrated a sort of combination of Christmas and Hanukkah, which was really, really nice. So let's get into my list, and we're going to start with an album that was released on the 28th of January 2022, and that is Jethro Tull's The Zealot Gene. A real comeback album for them. They hadn't done an album of all new material since 1999 with jtull.com. They had done a Christmas album in 2003, but that was a sort of a combination of re-recordings of old sort of Jethro Tull themed Christmas songs and sort of traditional carols done up in a Jethro Tull way. So it doesn't really count as a studio album. So it's been 23 years between drinks for Jethro Tull. Of course, the big difference here is this is the first album since their very first album that doesn't have Martin Barre on it. He is a little bit missed on this album, but the songwriting is really, really great on this album. Ian Anderson, his voice obviously not what it once was, but I think he's written songs that suit the character of his voice as it is in 2022 very well. I won't go through all the songs because I don't want to make this a particularly lengthy video. For albums where I have done reviews, there are about 5 of these albums where I've already done reviews of them. I will leave links in the description where you can go and have a look at those reviews and get my more in-depth thoughts about those albums. But a really, really good album. Really, really enjoyed it. Thought it was a great sort of return to form for Jethro Tull. Really enjoyed it. The next album I'm going to have a look at was released on the 11th of February, and that is Shades and Echoes, which is the first album by a project called Forenzics. Now this is a project between Tim Finn and Eddie Rayner, of course both formerly of Split Enz back in the 70s and 80s. Along with on some of these songs a band called Double Life, which is a band that Eddie Rayner has put together. Now about half of these songs are original songs with Tim and Eddie and Double Life. The other half of these songs are songs that Tim and Eddie, what they've done is they've gone back into old Split Enz songs and used little themes and stuff for them, but rather than do cover versions, they've written completely new songs, just incorporating these little sort of hints and things, shades and echoes, as the title suggests, of these old Split Enz songs. And they work wonderfully well. Tim's in really good voice. He has sounded a little fragile in some of his more recent stuff vocally, but I think it works really well on this album. He sings really well. Sometimes he sings really strong. Sometimes he uses that fragility and makes something really sort of achingly beautiful, which I really, really appreciate. Terrific album. Well worth it. Has a cameo from Megan Washington on one of the songs, a song called Rules. You also get one of their fellow Split Enz former members in Noel Crombie making an appearance as well, and Phil Manzanera on electric guitar. And that reminds me, the first of my little honourable mentions is that Tim also did an album with Phil Manzanera this year called The Ghost of Santiago. It's a follow-up to the album they did last year called Caught by the Heart, and it's well worth a listen as well. The next album in my top 10 albums from 2022 is was released on the 18th of February. A lot of my albums were released in the first half of the year. It was a really good first half of the year for me, for music. So this one was released on the 18th of February, and it is the most recent album by Midnight Oil, and that is Resist. Great to have the boys back. Of course, in 2020, they released the Makarrata project. That one I probably like a little better than this one, but this one's still really, really good. Recorded with the late, great Bones Hillman before he sadly passed away. These songs were all recorded around the same time as the songs from the Makarrata project, and they're really good. If you're sort of into that sort of mid-period, Midnight Oil, sort of Diesel and Dust, Blue Sky Mining, Earth and Sun and Moon, that sort of thing, this will really hit the spot. It's a great album. Really enjoyed that one. Will it be their last album? We'll have to wait and see. Of course, they've done their last tour. They won't be touring anymore, but they haven't necessarily ruled out doing any more albums, so we'll just have to wait and see. The next album on my list was released on the 25th of February. This is one I did do a review on, and that is The Tipping Point by Tears for Fears. So I won't go into a lot of detail on this one. If you want to know my thoughts on this album, other than the fact that I'll tell you right now, it is an absolutely marvelous album, please go and have a look at my review. It'll give you all the details of what I thought of the album beyond the fact that it's just an excellent album. The next album we're going to have a look at was released on the 4th of March. It is a 3-disc beast on vinyl, and that is By Royal Decree by the Flower Kings. Now, there are no real surprises with the Flower Kings these days. You should know what you're getting yourself in for when you buy a Flower Kings album. That doesn't mean to say it's not really, really well done, and it is. If you love lush, symphonic prog of that sort of 70s style, with absolutely fabulous guitar playing from Roy Stolt, then this is an album that you absolutely must own. They don't really do the sort of sidelong epics anymore. They haven't for the last couple of albums, but that's fine. There's still some longish tracks on this album, and it's really, really enjoyable. As I say, really sort of lush symphonic prog. If that's your thing, this is definitely an album well worth getting. The next album's definitely one of the contenders for my album of the year, but we'll have to wait and see whether it actually takes that spot when we get there. And that is another album also released on the 4th of March, and that is the latest album by Marillion, An Hour Before It's Dark. Yes, I bought it off their website and managed to get the autographed copy. Again, an album that I have done a review on, so if you want to know my sort of more detailed thoughts on this album, go and have a look at my review. Long story short, I think this is one of the best albums they've done in a while. I like it better than the last 2 or 3 albums, and that's not to say I didn't like those albums. I really like those albums a lot, but I like this one a lot better. So slightly shorter songs on this one, certainly than Fear, which was, you know, sort of apart from a couple of shorter songs, was all side-long epics. But really good themes. I love the lyrics on this album too. So, yeah. The next album we're going to have a look at was released on the 11th of March. It is the latest album by Hoodoo Gurus, and it is called Chariot of the Gods. Now, for those of you, my non-Australian viewers who are not overly familiar with Hoodoo Gurus, they're really sort of 60s influenced, garage rock, come power pop sort of thing. Wonderful music, really, really catchy, but also really, really crunchy. Humorous lyrics sometimes wry, sometimes quite deep. Great lyricist Dave Faulkner, who's the lead singer and rhythm guitarist of the band. their first album in a long while too, and well worth a listen. I did a show on The Contrarians where we talked about our three favourite albums of the first half of 2022. I'll put a link to that in the description too, so you can go and have a look at that. This was definitely one of the albums that I mentioned. Just wonderful, really great, as I say, sort of catchy yet crunchy, wonderful sort of power pop songs with a real sort of 60s influence to them. Well worth checking out if you haven't. The next album we're going to have a look at was released on the 10th of June. It's the latest album by one of my favourite bands, The Tangent. Songs from the Hard Shoulder. There is no Tangent album that disappoints. This one is absolutely no exception. Fabulous album. Again, I've done a review on this one, so I won't go into detail on it. If you want to know my more detailed thoughts on this album, definitely go and check that review out. But kudos to Andy Tillison and the rest of the band, because they've knocked it out of the park once again. Absolutely wonderful album. Speaking of albums that we have with like Hoodoo Gurus and Jethro Tull and Tears for Fears that were sort of real comeback albums after a long period away, this one definitely falls into that category. It was released on the 24th of June, long anticipated, and that is Closure Continuation by Porcupine Tree. Again, I've done a review of this album, so go and check that out if you want my more detailed thoughts on this album. But long story short, a really good comeback album from Porcupine Tree. Definitely sounds like a Porcupine Tree album. If you're one of those people who I personally don't get, who don't like what Steven Wilson's been doing in his solo career, and you've been really pining for that Porcupine Tree sound, this album will absolutely scratch that itch for you. It's a great album, wonderful songwriting, great playing. Colin Edwin, a little missed, but Steven Wilson's a really good bass player as well, so not missed too much. They have different styles of bass players, and I think Steven Wilson's bass playing suits this album probably better than Colin's might have anyway. But for those of you who are sort of Porcupine Tree onlyists when it comes to Steven Wilson, give his solo work a chance. I think his solo work is absolutely brilliant, and I am personally very, very excited that Steven Wilson will have another solo album coming out next year in 2023. So looking forward to that. Now, the last of my top 10 albums for 2022 was released on the 14th of October, so a relatively recent one. And that is the posthumous solo album by David Longden, Door 1. Honourable mention to Big Trains, Welcome to the Planet. I did a review of this album as well, so do check that out if you're interested. That was released on the 28th of January, so right at the beginning of the year. This David Longden album, though, is absolutely gorgeous. It's sort of achingly beautiful, as you expect from David Longden, but it's sort of doubly so for the fact that it's a posthumous album. It's been just over a year now since we tragically lost David. Real heartbreak that was. I have a tribute video as well to David Longden if you want to have a look at that. It's in my favourite albums of all time playlist, so you can check that out. But this album's absolutely gorgeous. You have some sort of slightly shorter songs on side 1, and then side 2 you have a couple of really longer songs. There's 3 songs in total on side 2. One's a little shorter. There's one sort of 11-minute sort of mini epic on there. Absolutely beautiful album. Not quite the same as a Big Train album. It's a little more gentle, a little more acoustic in parts. I mean, there are certainly some more rocking passages to it as well. but it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's just such a shame that David wasn't here to see it come to completion. The people who sort of finished it, it was about 80% done, I believe, when he tragically lost his life. And the people who finished it off for him did an absolutely terrific job. So those are my 10 top albums of 2022. Now, which one was my favourite? It's one that, although it was released early in the year, I didn't get around to until fairly recently. And I wish I'd been spending more time this year with this album because I absolutely adore it. I am going to give it to Shades and Echoes by Forenzics. This album is absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if this album is available on Spotify or not. I haven't checked, or any of your other listening apps of choice. But if it is, please go and check it out. Especially if you're a Split Enz or a Tim Finn fan. I think this is some of the best work Tim's done in maybe the last 20 years. Absolutely wonderful. So those are my favourite albums of 2022. I know I've missed a whole hell of a lot. I haven't listened to as much new music this year as I really, really wanted to. So please, in the comments, let me know what albums I've missed, which albums you think I should be listening to. Remember the sort of music that I've sort of talked about on the channel and that sort of thing too. So if there's an album you think, hey, Bicyclelegs, you'd really love this album based on what you've talked about on the channel, please put that in the comments, let me know, and I will definitely go and check it out. Tell me which of my albums sort of made your list too. I'd love to know which ones of these are in your favourite albums of 2022 as well. I know 2 or 3 of them are going to come up in some people's lists, but I'd love to know. Especially if you've listened to that Forenzics album. If you have, please let me know in the comments and let me know what you thought of it, because I think it's an absolutely cracking album. Please like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed so far. We're up to 376 subscribers last time I checked, which is absolutely fabulous. The channel's only been going for just over a year, so I'm really, really happy with that. But please do like, share and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, please do go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have a whole bunch of videos on the channel now. I release a new video pretty much every week, so there's 50-60 videos on the channel now, and they're all playlisted. So if you want to look at my sort of favorite albums of all time, there's a playlist for that. If you want to look at my In Defense Of series, where I talk about albums that maybe get a bad rap from the critics and the fans, there's a playlist for that. If you want to look at my studio albums ranked shows, which seem to be some of the most popular shows on the channel, playlist for that. My new series, Bicyclelegs Discovered Rush, there's 2 episodes in that one, and there's a playlist for those, and so on and so on. So please, if you're new to the channel, go and have a look at some of my other content. Again, that would really, really help the channel out. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at Bicyclelegs on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, I'm mostly posting the albums I happen to be listening to at the time, as well as posting channel updates. On Twitter, I talk about anything and everything, but I am definitely trying to give that more of a music focus. Happy New Year to all my viewers. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.